Let me ask you this. Are you setting your project up for success or failure without even knowing it? The reality is, most projects fail from the early mistakes. So before you start your next project, let's make sure you are not making same mistakes some project managers already make. Welcome to IF Global Management Training to help you grow your skills and advance your profession. Whether you're preparing for your PMP exam or leading your next big project, you are in the right place. If you're new here, I'm Farhia Igal, a project management trainer, consultant, and coach. In today's video, we are unpacking the top 5 project management mistakes that every project manager should avoid. Starting with the most common one, choosing wrong methodology for your project. Know that this one decision can shape the entire route of your project. Because if you choose methodology that doesn't fit your project, it can create immediate setback before the work even begins. Here's the thing. Every project does not fit Agile. Or not every project needs to have extensive planning. Your methodology should suit your project needs. Let me explain this with examples. Say you're managing product development project, where the requirements are changing fast. Stakeholders wanted to provide continuous feedback, and you're delivering project multiple times. In that case, Agile or Scrum might be the best choice for that project. They will give you the flexibility, speed, and stakeholder collaboration your project needs. But on the other hand, if you are managing government project or compliance project, the requirements are defined upfront, and there will be little room for change. So using Agile is the biggest mistake. Instead, productive, also known as a waterfall approach, is your best approach for that kind of project. The waterfall approach will give you the structure and the documentation for those project needs. But right now, the question is, why are we emphasizing this? Because more than often, the project managers default to whatever methodology they used before or what their organization is advising them without asking the real question, what does this project needs? Now let's move on to how you can choose a right methodology for your project. Number 1, evaluate the nature of the work by asking, is the scope clear and stable, or are we expecting a lot of changes? Number 2, consider stakeholder expectation. Do the stakeholder want real involvement and flexibility, or formal documentation and checkpoints? Number 3, look at the deliverable needs. Are we delivering final product, or are we releasing small incrementals? Number 4, do not forget your team. Do your team have experience with Agile, Waterfall, or Hybrid? Here's the good tip to know. If your project sits at somewhere in the middle of Agile and Waterfall, you don't have to choose one methodology. Instead, use Hybrid approach. Hybrid approach lets you combine both Agile deliverables and Waterfall governance. Because at the end of the day, a good methodology supports your project. So remember, making the right choice earlier sets your project to success. Now that you understand how critical methodology is, let's move on to mistake number 2, unclear requirements. This mistake happens more often than you think, and it is one of the biggest reasons that some projects waste resources and eventually fail. The truth is, if your team does not know what the success looks like, they will never reach it. You might assume everyone is on the same page, but until you clearly define and document the project requirement, assumption takes over. And remember, assumptions are dangerous in the project work. Picture this. You are starting a new project, and the client tells you, just start the project. I will tell you what I need when I see it. That seems like the client is flexible, but that is a red flag. When the project requirement keeps shifting, your team ends up wasting time and money and will always be wondering whether they are hitting the target or not. So to avoid this, number one, document the detailed requirement early on the project and do not skip validation. This is done by reviewing the requirement with the stakeholders, clarifying any questions, and agreeing on what's in scope and what out of scope. Number two, get sign-up from the key stakeholders. Ensure to get their commitment early on. But if you don't, you will spend more time engaging them and fixing issues later in the project. Number three, do not assume the requirements are set and done. Make sure to review and refine them throughout the project. And always check if the goals are aligned with the business needs as the project progresses. The key takeaway here is clarifying the requirement at the beginning saves you time, money, and credibility later on. At the same time, when your team knows what and the why, they can focus on deliverable results. Let's talk about the most overlooked mistakes right now. Poor risk management. It's important to plan tasks and set deadlines, but if you don't identify project risk, you will end up facing unmanageable risk and costly rework. Risk management, it's not about handling disaster. It's about recognizing anything big or small that could impact the project scope, cost, timeline, quality, and even the team members. This includes unexpected change requests, losing key team members, vendor delay, poor quality deliverables, new regulation, or stakeholders who are shifting their priorities. The other thing is to note here is, even if the project manager identifies the project risk, but skips proper risk analysis, two things usually happen. The first one, you will waste time reacting to risk that could have been managed earlier. And the second one, you will lose the trust of the stakeholders. So let me tell you how to manage risk effectively. Step one, identify risk earlier. During the planning phase, sit down with your project team and stakeholders and ask questions like, what might go wrong? What might hold us back? And have there been any changes since last time we ran this kind of project? Then create a risk register document that contains the internal and external risk of the project. Number two, analyze and prioritize those risks. Not all risks are same. So analyze and prioritize those risks by rating their likelihood of happening and their impact. And also remember to focus on what risk that has high probability of happening and has a higher impact. Step three, develop risk response strategy by deciding which risk can be avoided entirely by changing the project plan, which one can be mitigated by reducing their chance of happening and their impact, which risks can be transferred, for example, by outsourcing the work or insurance, and which ones we can accept so we can create contingency plan in case they happen. Let me give you a quick example of how risk response strategy works. Let's say your project depends on a single vendor to deliver critical parts on time. So the risk response strategy could be mitigate that risk by identifying backup supplier or accepting the risk of the delay by adding buffer on your schedule. The last step to manage risk effectively is assign ownership and monitor project risk because risks aren't set and forgot. So you must maintain the risk register and update them regularly. And also assigning someone to each risk and reporting the progress during the check-in. Here's the real takeaway on risk management. Project rarely fails after big mistakes. They fail because it's smaller risks that were not managed properly. So talented project managers do not just react to the risk. They identify, assess, create response plan before the risk even occurs. Now we should talk about mistake number 4, poor communication. This mistake does not always show up right away, but when it does, it spreads quickly. No matter how your project is put together, if your communication is not consistent, clear, and useful, everything starts to fall apart. Here's what happened. When people do not know what's happening, they start making assumptions. And those assumptions can turn into misunderstanding, missed deadlines, and sometimes conflict within your team. So let me give you a good example. Your development team is waiting on feedback from the stakeholder, but no one follows up. So they sit idle, waiting for input. Then the schedule slips, and everyone scrambles to catch up. This is lack of communication, because this issue could have been resolved with one quick update. So what should you do to avoid communication breakdown? Here's what you should do. Use communication planning. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It should be clear on what, when, and how. Meaning, who needs to know what do they need to know, and how they will be communicated. Also define your communication rhythm, whether it is daily stand-up, weekly reports, or weekly stakeholder update. But remember, project communication is not only about distributing information. Your communication includes listening, checking, understanding, and creating a space for question. Also, do not forget to distribute the information all your teams. All right, here's the biggest takeaway. Communication is a soft skill, and it is one of the strongest tools project manager can have, because when the team is consistently updated, everyone stays aligned. Let's finish with mistake number 5, poor resource allocation. Your project can have a clear goal, solid plan, great communication, but if right people are not working on right task, right time, the entire project suffers. Here's what poor resource allocation looks like. When your top performers are stuck on the low priorities, and when you're assigning a junior team member to task that needs a senior, and the task ends up dragging for weeks. Or maybe you're spreading your team so thin because everyone is multitasking across multiple projects. And now the quality and the deadlines are falling behind everywhere. So let me show you how to fix that. Step number 1, start with feasibility. Before assigning any task, get clear picture of your project capability. Who is overbooked and who has not been fully used. Step number 2, match skills to task. Do not just assign based on availability. Assign based on capability. Number 3, balance your workload intentionally. Avoid overloading your top performers while the others stay idle. Step number 4, monitor and adjust. If your project changes or needs more resources, remember to allocate resources to prevent bottlenecks before they even happen. The real lesson on this: human resources are people, each with unique skills and limitations. So when they are properly supported and assigned, project moves fast without stress for anyone involved. Now let's recap the top 5 project managers' mistakes. Number 1, choosing wrong methodology for your project. Number 2, having unclear requirement. Number 3, poor risk management plan. Number 4, ineffective communication. And number 5, poor resource allocation. There you have it. If you wanted to avoid these mistakes, understand what those mistakes are and make sure to know how to avoid them. Thanks for watching. I'm Farhila Gal, and I will see you in next video.